You're listening to the Racer Racer podcast presented by Race 92. Race 92 is a vintage-inspired racing apparel brand specializing in celebrating vintage race culture and adapting to motorsports today. Check out race92.com for all your racing merchandise needs. I'm your co-host, Aaron McTee. Other co-hosts you may have seen walking out of Barber Lounge 459 with a big old smile on his face. You might have seen him at a dirt track. He is the one and only Scott Bowie.
Hello, Aaron. How are you?
I'm doing good. Having some air conditioning problems, and you wouldn't happen to know who I could possibly call now, would you?
I do. The fine
Really?
folks are good guys. Yes.
Now,
Call
funny.
Ryan and the fine folks are good guys, and they'll keep you. My air conditioner is working flawlessly, whereas yours was installed by
Different.
a competitor
Yep.
of theirs, and it is suffering from issues because they did not do the quality job that the fine folks at Good Guys did.
No, we're joking, but like legit, like I'm having air conditioning problems. So that is not a joke, and this is not staged by any means.
No, I've seen the videos.
You've seen the video.
It's running a little rough, and they'll get you figured out.
Yeah, I sure hope so. But anyway, yes, our guest today is Tom Osborne. We talked about it a little bit last week. Tom is a great guy. A lot of people, may not be familiar with the name or familiar with him, but you're definitely familiar if you're involved in racing in any aspect, or even outside of racing, which you'll find out if you listen to the interview. You definitely are aware of something that he's been involved with.
Yeah, Tom, great guy. Always been super friendly. Known him for 40 plus years now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just he's just had he's got a really interesting career, really interesting guy, and he's done some great artwork for liveries for different people in motorsports, and he's also done a lot of work in the toy industry, to which he talks about pretty extensively in this. So, great time, great interview. Always enjoy talking to him.
Yeah, no, it's really cool to talk to him. And I went to school for graphic design, and he's a fellow graphic designer and someone, as a graphic designer, someone definitely you'd want to look up to, because he's done some very impressive things. Very impressive things that or would be a dream come true for a lot of people in the whether in the toy industry, graphic design industry. You name it. He's definitely has done it in that industry. From toys, from being in talks about being in George Lucas's house, going over Star Wars drawings or whatever, like for toys. It's very impressive. And like I said, not
Yeah,
just racing, just in general. Very, very impressive individual, and nice, really nice guy. And he was talking about his family. His son, is involved in the movie industry. I think he thinks he won an Oscar, right, or something like that.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone around him is successful as well, and he definitely, I'm sure, has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, he's like so many of us. He fell in love with racing as a kid, and racing played a
Yeah.
huge part of his life. Giving back to the sport in the ways that he could, and or giving to the sport, I should say, in the ways that he could, and he's very thankful for that time. And yeah, I could go on and on about Tom. Just a great guy. I hope everybody listens and enjoys it, because he has had a really interesting life.
Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely good listen. And as far as racing news, before we get into some other news, first racing news. So we had Daytona. And well, what's it even called now? It's not, obviously not the Firecracker 400 anymore. That's
I don't
been
know.
what, 10,
Still the
15
Pepsi
years?
400? I don't
No.
know.
Yeah. But it's not the same. I think July 4th was kind of cool, but you know, times change, right? But and so Saturday night, the race rained out. So that's when we were left to Sunday. More rain issues on Sunday, but Austin Dillon won. But decent race. I watched the end of it. I don't watch a lot of NASCAR races, but I did watch the last 50 laps or so.
I think they only had like 20 cars run at the end or something. I
Yeah,
mean, they
there
had
isn't a lot.
that big crash during the rain, took out a bunch of cars, and it's definitely not what it once was. I don't believe,
Yeah.
and I'm not here to poo-poo NASCAR or Daytona or any of that. Just something missing. The racing just isn't the same at the big tracks as it used to be. Times change, obviously, but
Mhm.
short track racing is probably a little bit better than it has been in the past.
Yeah.
But the big track stuff just doesn't interest me at all. Um, I just don't find it fun to watch.
Right. No, absolutely. Other news. So Formula One. I know you watched the Formula One race. I believe I did not watch the Formula One race.
Watch part of it. Big crash in the start. I should say big crash, but crash in the start. Hamilton and Alonso get into it. Alonso's originally mad. Says a few things. I think that I wouldn't say regrets, but wishes he wouldn't have said. And you could call it Hamilton idiot. And and to Hamilton's credit, he immediately got out of the car, watched the crash, said, "Hey, that's all my fault." Later on, I think he took a little bit of offense to what Alonso said about him, but it's heat of the moment. What are you gonna do? And then Verstappen starts, I think, like 14th because of a drive train change. And he was up front immediately. He just sliced through the field. I mean, it's no contest right now.
Right. Yeah. No.
Um,
Verstappen obviously strong last year, and and I don't. What's the points situation look like in Formula One now?
well, he's leading. Red
Right.
Bull, I'm sure, is leading the constructors' points. I think Ferrari. I think Leclerc is second in points. I think I could be wrong. Um,
So
Ferrari may still be second.
Perez is actually second right now.
Okay,
Verstappen's 284 points, and Perez is 191.
okay, that would make sense.
Um,
So then Leclerc's third.
yep, Leclerc, and then Sainz, and then Russell,
All right.
and then
So
Hamilton sixth.
basically, what almost as an always in Formula One, team cars run together.
Right.
They pretty much finish right near each other on the track unless one of them drops out, and they finish near each other in points, and pretty typical F1 stuff. But I mean, it was okay racing, you know.
Yeah. No, it was. I mean, I saw some of the highlight stuff. Looked like a decent race. Do we have any other racing news? I know some other news we're going to get
The only
into,
thing
but
really was Kokomo SmackDown was this past weekend. USAC sprint cars in Kokomo, kind of their track, they combine like track championship and points, and USAC sprint cars. I think the first two nights, but on the final night, uh, Cummins won, just killed the field, led every lap. To which he picked up bonus. He won $35,000 for leading every lap and winning the feature. So big night for him. Good racing, pretty clean the entire time. Not a lot of crashes. So Kokomo was fast as it always is. Racing was hard, and it was a good night. I mean, they had good crowd, so it was a really strong night for them.
Kokomo's a great track. I've been to Kokomo once or twice, and no, I love Kokomo.
Fast, it's really weird. The bottom part still races like the old Kokomo, and then you got it now where it's banked and it runs a little different up there. But it I mean, they'll get you if you ain't careful. That wall will bite you. But it's a I mean, it's a driver's racetrack, man. You got to go, and you got to be good. I mean, you can't mess around there, or that place will get you.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Um, well, if we don't have any other racing news, we have a couple little announcements, I think.
Yes, go
So
ahead.
September 27th, if you're in the Indianapolis area, and I'm gonna do a separate video for this too, probably, but we'll make an announcement at least if you're listening. If you're a true listener and you're listening to us past this point, right? Or if you're not if you're not fast forwarding to the interview or whatever, September 27th, we will be doing a monthly live show. Well, at least the first show we have in the
Right. We'll
calendar.
see how
So
that one goes.
we'll see how that one goes. We don't want to jump the gun here, but September 27th at McGilvery's and Speedway
It's a
at, I
Tuesday night,
believe, Tuesday night, 7 p.m.
7 p.m.
7 to 8.
Yep. We will announce the guests closer to the date. They're both locked in, but I just want to make sure that nothing comes up in the next couple of weeks. But it'll be a great time, be a fun time. Please come out if you enjoy the show. If you're in the Indy area, um, please come out and have fun at McGilvery's with us. And we got to thank the Top Gun Racing, Grant King Shops, for helping us put this together with McGilvery's. So thank
Yeah.
you to them. And yeah, now I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun. We actually did a sound check on Saturday and made sure to try to work out the bugs beforehand, so we're not trying to figure it out right before the show. And I think so far we have done it. It'll be different when there's, when the place has a lot of people in it. But now, just really looking forward to it, and looking forward to meeting people and seeing old friends, meeting new friends. Just can't wait.
Yeah, no, really looking forward to it. Something we've been working on for a little bit. We've been in contact with the McGilvery's folks. Great people. Definitely check them out. And so for people who don't know, McGilvery's at one point was a smoking bar, and now it's not. They've
Right.
redone a lot of it. It's really nice inside. They've redone, I believe, the booths and stuff, and it's really nice inside. So definitely, give it a try. I've never had their pizza, but I heard their pizza is really, really good.
I may end up ordering one
Yeah, we'll order one.
before we go, just so I can put my stamp of approval on it.
No, I'm gonna have to order something the night of the show because
Right.
I get very hangry.
Well, he is slightly built, but he eats a lot. So we got to keep this one fed, heavily fed.
Yeah, I gotta eat. So no, I mean it'll be fun, and then we may have to keep you.
Yeah.
We may have to kind of keep you in the corner because the women there and everyone's gonna be going crazy after
So
you.
Robin's going to be there, so there won't be none of that. So we're going to
Oh.
make sure none of that happens. Plus, I don't think that that's something she has to worry too much about, whether she's there or not. But no, I mean, yeah, it'd be fun. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, it will be. And then we talked about last week about the video at St. Louis we filmed with it was me, good friend of the show, Jacob Smith, who's also my partner at Race 92. We raced go-karts with Robbie McGee, his sister as well, Amanda, participated. But we raced go-karts with Robbie McGee, and we filmed it, kind of like the Jagger Jones karting video. If you haven't checked that one out, check that one out. That was a lot of fun. You see, it was funny with Jagger. He was expecting us to be a lot worse than what we were. So I have to give him crap about that. He's like, I was kind of surprised. I'm like, well, thanks, Jagger. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you guys look like you had a ton of fun. Gateway, it's a fun video to watch. Please check it out. You got some work this weekend as well. We won't talk about it too much
Yeah,
here,
we
but
do.
with the U.S. Nationals,
Man, there's a
you'll be
lot of
doing some
stuff going
stuff.
on, and there's a private event. I don't even know if we can talk about it at all yet, but that I've been
Right.
working on some stuff, and yeah, there's a lot of irons in the fire. In worst case, I think we'll be able to release that at some capacity because I'm planning on recording it. So and
Right.
that's pretty cool. It's kind of surreal that we're going to be able to do it, but there's a lot of cool stuff happening. And yeah, just
Yeah,
got to get this
lot
air
of,
conditioning problem figured out, and then I
yeah.
can focus on
Well,
some other stuff.
I figure you got about 4 more weeks and it won't matter. If
That's
you can
true.
survive about 4 more weeks, you'll be all right.
Yeah. But the good news is if I do need to get someone over here I can trust, I know who to call.
That's right. Good guys. Good guys, heating and air.
So if you ever have a question about who to contact, just ask Scott. In McGilvery's, if you have a problem with your air, please come up to Scott Bowie and he will tell you
That's
who to
right.
call.
That's right. And if you need a good sandwich, go to McGilvery's.
They're gonna say go to Good Guys. You're gonna have people calling Good Guys for everything.
That's right. Man, yeah, it's going to be pretty fun. It's like anything else we do. We try to keep it lighthearted, and
Mhm.
that's what we're trying to do with these shows that we have planned. Hopefully once a month, and just people can come out and they can enjoy an hour and a half of their life, and just be able to enjoy themselves and kind of maybe gather with like-minded people. You know what I'm saying? So that's what we're kind of looking forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, if you haven't, please hit like and subscribe on YouTube. Also check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Like I said, I don't know the exact day, but I will be releasing the Robbie McGee karting video. Probably, I mean, it's done. So Wednesday or Thursday this week. So if you're listening to this, it may already be released. If not, we'll release it on Thursday. And I've already sent it to Robbie, and we got his seal of approval. He liked it. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I
Yep.
tell you what, man. Like when we started this podcast, and if you would tell me I would have got to do the things that we've got to do so far, I mean, just over a year in, right? I mean,
Right.
I've got to ride in a two-seater with Mario Andretti, race go-karts against Indy 500 driver. I mean, it's pretty cool. So, yeah, no, it's been a great ride so far.
Yeah, you get to do all those things. I just get to stand there and watch.
I know.
By
Poor
the way,
Scott.
I have had the opportunity to do these too. I've declined them. So just so I'm being transparent here.
Yep. Well,
Um, oh, and let's talk about our guest next week.
next week, yeah. Johnny Parsons Jr., right? Junior.
Yes,
Yes.
Johnny Parsons Jr. It was a great talk. We're going to get dirty with Johnny for a little bit. If anybody remembers his helmet, it used to say on when he ran dirt, it said getting dirty. So it was a fun talk. Johnny, man, I mean, what do you say? He came to the speedway for the first time in 70. Is that right?
Yeah, around that time.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, great story. Obviously, his dad's Indy 500 winner. But he um he was a cop for a little while in California, and he pulled over James Garner, right?
right.
He talks about that story. It's kind of interesting, and he connected with him later on in life, as a race car driver. So it's kind of funny. Great guy. We had a little bit of phone issues with it, but so I'll have to clean up some of that. But no, it was definitely a great interview.
Yeah, we hope to do more with Johnny in the future.
Yeah.
Um, he's he and his half brother Poncho. I mean, real legends of the sport. Hopefully, we get Poncho on here at some time. Poncho Carter, for my money, one of the great driving talents of his time. Unfortunately, terrible IndyCar crash. You hurt his feet. I'm sure everybody listening to the show probably knows the story. And the fact that he was able to come back from that and not only drive but thrive is just, and again, much like Mill Canyon, just an amazing story. And hopefully we can get poncho on here, but Johnny was such a great racer himself. So good on the big tracks.
Sure.
So it was really great talking to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, definitely stay tuned for next week. And yeah, thanks everyone for watching and listening. And remember to hit like and subscribe. And yeah, hope everyone has a great week.
Take care, bye.
Our guest today is a motorsports artist and toy designer. We're joined by Tom Osborne. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. I'm a fellow graphic designer, so no, I've been actually looking forward to this, and I've heard a lot about some of the stuff you've done, and I actually have at least one T-shirt I can think of that you designed, the Evil Knievel livery. So it's really cool to talk to you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, and just wish we could have got the camera part going, but. Yeah, I think that's the only T-shirt I do something. Well, there's probably a couple other ones, but yeah, that was done for obviously for that car, which is pretty well known, or it's kind of pretty iconic just for its paint scheme, not for its performance.
Right. It's one of the few cars that at the Speedway missed the show, but everybody still recognizes it.
Yeah, well, it actually ran twice. It ran in 77 and 78. And 77 was the Evil Knievel paint scheme. And 78 was the Oberdorfer paint scheme, which is
right.
Almost the same. It's a little different in orange and brown, which was Oberdorfer's colors. So,
yeah, am I wrong about that? Because I'm wrong a lot. So I thought Gary missed a show with that car. He made the show with that car?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think he finished 16th or something.
Did he really? Well,
yeah.
Look at me with egg on my face.
Yeah, no, it made it both Grant's cars that year. Sheldon drove the other one. Sheldon Kinzer drove I guess it was Genesee Beer, or I think it was Genesee Beer.
Yeah.
So both of Grant's cars made the show that year. Well, they both, and then John Martin drove them the first. John Martin and who else? I can't remember. Oh, Sheldon, I guess, drove them the first year. So they were actually there 3 years. And I did Grant called them dragons, and they might have been dragging something if they couldn't go, if they couldn't go faster, but they had trouble with the car warping a little bit, like twisting. But the dragon itself, I also designed the logo of the dragon that's on the nose of those cars, which is, I think, still around. Both those cars are still around, I think. Well, I know the Evil Knievel car is. I think I heard it was out in the Evil Knievel Museum, wherever that is. Kansas, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's in Kansas.
Last I saw that car was on a YouTube video for, I think it was like Donut Media, Scott, and they like parked it on the street in LA to see how many parking tickets they would get.
That's right.
I saw that. That was funny. People come up and just look at it like it's like parked next to a meter, parking meter. Right. It was funny.
So Tom, kind of tell us, what was the path that kind of led you to doing the job that you did and getting into racing and toy design?
Yeah, my sister, who's 10 years older than I am, got an Austin Healey when she was 20 some years old, and started getting Road and Track magazine, and I started looking at it and reading it. And as a car guy, but I loved the way the race cars looked, and I found out along the line that the biggest race in the world was, pretty close to my house. So I first went to the Speedway in 1966, and we no sooner sat down than Chuck Rohde was killed right in front of us.
Oh, wow.
It didn't look like a bad crash. It's kind of like Earnhardt's. And the first race I attended was 1967, and I've attended every one since then. except 1972 when I was in a crash myself going to the race morning. I was in a crash in Batesville, Indiana, and 8 people were hospitalized, including myself. So that's kind of how I started. And then in 1967 also, my dad took me and a couple other people went to the Daytona 500. And we had some connections down there with a guy we knew that was a radio sports guy on television, and he got us great credentials. And so I was 15 years old, and I'm like standing in the live pit of Cale Yarborough, and sat and talked with him for a couple hours. And there was a guy there named John Fowler who worked for Firestone, and he had a son that was a little younger than me, so we kind of hung around together during practice and that. And I asked John Fowler how to get involved in racing. He says, well, if you ever want to get, again, he's working for Firestone. He says, well, if you want to get involved in racing, talk to Grant King. And so that was in 67. And then I went to the University of Cincinnati industrial design program. I wanted to be a car designer. And the 5-year program there that has mandatory co-oping. You co-op at that time 6 times. You co-op for 3 months and then come back to work or come back to school for 3 months. And you just alternate that for the last 3 years of your schooling there. So I ended up an opportunity to work for RCA over on Sherman Avenue in Indianapolis. And I did something called a double section, which means I was going to be there for 6 months in a row, from January to June of 1974. And about the second week I was there, I decided I'm going to try to get involved in racing and call Grant King. So I called Grant King's shop, and Doris answered, and we talked for a while. She's very pleasant, but I would say it wasn't really getting anywhere. And then I mentioned John Fowler's name, and she said, oh, you know, John, well, why don't you come over and see us tomorrow night? And so I drove out the next night. I drove out to the shop. I couldn't believe that they were working after dinner. Grant worked as, I mean, he's the hardest working man I've ever known. And he would go to 11 o'clock at night. And so I stood around for a week. Every night I went out there and just stood around. And so some of the guys were there was Zoom. I don't remember Zoom's name. Shoot, I can't think of any. Or Tom Deal, of course, was one of the crew members. And Tom and I are still friends, and I park at his house every year for the 500. But finally, Grant says, "Are you the guy who can draw?" And I says, "Yeah." He says, "Well, I've got a bunch of chassis here. I want you to record for me, draw for me." So I did blueprints of, or did the drawings for blueprints of several of the sprint cars and championship dirt car. Nothing on the Indy cars, but I think one of my drawings, the chassis hanging up out at Grant's now. A few other drawings that I've done over the years that are out there at Billy and Stephanie Throckmorton's place. So I started drawing them, and then it was getting into racing season, and they had just hired Tom Sneva to drive for them. Chris Loft was the driver at the time, and he left. They hired some rookie named Tom Sneva, and then Grant says, "Well, you want to go to race with us?" And so I said, "Absolutely, of course." So I rode in there with them in their big red Eldorado to Trenton, New Jersey that year. And Sneva qualified on the front row next to Andretti at that race. So I didn't really do anything in the pits. Nothing, during the race. I did, carried stuff around and that kind of stuff, but I never really jumped over the wall or anything. at Middle East then. So that I think was the race before the 500 that year, and it was cold though. I remember that. But anyway, so in 1974 was with Tom Sneeva's crew. Again, didn't do a whole lot, but I was in heaven. And one day, Grant's they were going to take the car out, pull it out with a tractor, and Grant said, "Well, why don't you get in it and steer it out there?" And so I did that, and I pulled onto pit lane there, and I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. I mean, a lot of guys pay their dues, and a lot of guys pay their dues in lower echelons of racing. And here in the second race, I'm involved with a race car, and it's the Indy 500. So Grant and I became great friends. He was my father died in 1969, so Grant was a kind of a surrogate dad to me for a long time. We, he was really so good to me. Him and he and Doris, and that's how I got started. And we just kind of, I wasn't an paid employee ever, and I was pursuing my career. Sometimes I wish I'd have stayed in Indianapolis. I thought I could be Roger Penske or something, but so we became great friends over the years, and that's kind of how it got started.
Wow, no, that's a really incredible story. So, I mean, at that point, you're talking about doing some design work. And at what point? And I know this really isn't racing related, but I know you were involved with the Kenner toys and Star Wars. At what point did that kind of happen?
Well, I graduated from the University of Cincinnati in June, like everybody else. And the following, I didn't do a whole lot, just kind of decide what to do and get my portfolio together. And I had co-opted at Kenner my first 3 times, so I knew everybody at Kenner. They knew me. And so when an opening came available, they hired me, and I started there in January 1976. And Kenner at the time was not a huge toy company. They had done things like Play-Doh and Easy Bake Oven and Baby Alive. But when I got there, I started working there on the $6 Million Man, which was one of the properties that they owned. And then one day somebody brought a script in, and all of us got a chance to read it. And it was for a movie called Star Wars. And everybody, of course, all the designers immediately jumped on it because it was what we called the toyetic. It had so many toys in it, with the ships and the figures and the vehicles and all that kind of stuff. So I did a lot of preliminary design work on a lot of the Star Wars stuff. Got to meet George Lucas a couple times, present to him.
Oh, wow.
In his house. And you talking about Edward Scissorhands. I also met Tim Burton, who was the guy who did Edward Scissorhands, who looks just like Edward Scissorhands with normal hands. I mean, it's amazing that I think it's a story about him. But anyway, so then so in 1977 we started with the Star Wars toys, and I was promoted to manager of design and eventually director of design. So I had a hand in everything that came out of the company for several years. Did a lot on the Ghostbuster line as well when we did the real Ghostbusters. But Star Wars was, the one that kind of made the company go, and it sort of keeps me semi-famous, I guess. I was in Nashville earlier this year in April for a convention like Comic-Con. It wasn't a Comic-Con, but it was in a hotel. We had about 6,000 to 7,000 people came through, and about half of them were dressed up. And I hadn't kept much from my days back then. Some people have kept a lot of stuff. I know one of my co-employees put his 2 sons through Notre Dame University on the stuff that he collected when he was there. So he was a lot smarter than I was from that standpoint. But anyway, at this convention in this past April, I had about a dozen of my old business cards, and people were paying $125 for me to sign them and give them to them. So I made about $800 in one day, which was fun. So I've done that a couple times. I did this show like that in Mexico City about 2 years ago, where I was more doing Ghostbusters then. Had a slide presentation and then was at a desk with about 23 other people from different companies, Mattel, and some of them were not toy makers, but were involved with the Star Wars toys. Like one of the guys who played Boba Fett was there. And so this last one I went to in April, the guy that was C-3PO was there. He's about 85 or 86 years old. Anthony Daniels, I think is his name.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I think so. Yeah.
It was a really good job. I mean, it paid very well, and we were on top of the world for all the years that I was there. But in 1991, 3 of us got a little restless, and we left and started our own company, consultancy, and we did that for 10 years. And then I did work at the University of Cincinnati full-time, placing students in these co-op jobs for a while. So I've done a lot of different stuff, and but all the time I'm racing, with Grant, and I think I went to most every track at the time, in Ontario and Milwaukee, and where else? Trenton. I was at Trenton. I was at Pocono. So Phoenix a couple times. It's an interesting story. We in '74, Tom Sneed was going to drive the IndyCar at Phoenix, and they had a midget race before that on the mile track. And somebody, I don't know who it was now, but somebody had a midget, and they asked Tom to drive it. So he's going to race in the midget race, and I guess it was the day before, and run in I think the Bobby Ball 150 or something like that. And so we're going to tow 2 cars from Indianapolis to Phoenix, and I'm riding along, and I didn't do any of the driving, but I was riding along with a couple guys from Chicago, and Daryl Soppy, who was the chief mechanic for a while. He was with us, and we got one truck pulling a trailer, nothing like they have today, nothing like these big semis. This was, I think, a coffin type trailer,
right?
That had IndyCar in it, and then the midget was being pulled on an open trailer. And we get about an hour outside of Indianapolis, maybe over by Terre Haute, and one of the trucks quit, and we found out that the alternator generator, whatever it was back then, wasn't charging the battery. So what we determined to do was we switched batteries and would run for 100 miles or so, then stop and switch batteries all the way to Phoenix.
Of course, you'd hate to stop and buy the correct part and just put the correct part on.
We did that when we got to Phoenix. We went to an auto store, and got the right part and put it in. But yeah, that was a fun trip.
I can't imagine driving all the way from Terre Haute or wherever that would have been to Phoenix like that. I just can't imagine.
Yeah, it happened.
That is hilarious.
That's Big Lou from Chicago, who was big, and he looked exactly like you'd think a guy named Big Lou from Chicago looked. he did a lot of the driving. A guy named Mike Guglielmucci, whose son Mike Jr. is involved in racing now.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a friend of mine. He went along, and like I say, I was in Daryl Soppy. I think that's how you pronounce his name, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that's how I've always pronounced it. And a lot of people would know
Yeah.
Daryl from, I mean, he had great success with Mario, and
he was.
Bill worked with him a lot. And yeah.
So, that was my experience. And then after Grant was gone, or actually even before that, I think, back in 1980, when I was on a crew with Grant, Walter Goodwin, whose birthday was like yesterday, I think. He and I became friends, and still friends. I saw him about 2 weeks ago. So I started hanging around with his championship dirt car, and that, again, didn't really. I'm not a mechanic of that quality. I never went that route. So started hanging around with him, and got to know Bill from that. Bill Bowie. So that's kind of my racing.
It was always great. Like, I know we called you a few times, and you would send us just designs for the midget or for whatever, and it was always so awesome when you would send something. You mentioned Milwaukee, and I told the story to Aaron and a few people there tonight where 81, you gave me actually a prototype game. It was a drag racing game. And
I remember that.
Yeah, I think it was called Redline. And I played that for like the next 6 years till it broke.
And it lasted 6 years. You don't have it now. You could probably sell it for a couple $100 if you had it now, even if it wasn't working.
Yes, that's what I was chastised about, because about 10 years ago I did end up getting rid of it. Along with all my slot cars, along with all my 45s from the 70s, along with all that stuff. I just had nowhere to put it anymore, and I ended up getting rid of all that. But I tell you, Tom, it's funny you mentioned all those people with Grant as well, and I think that's
everybody worked for Grant. Everybody worked for Grant at one time. Yeah, I think Jerry Weeks is the one who has the longest uninterrupted tenure at Grant King Racing. I think it's 3 years, or a little more than 3 years.
Oh, well, I mean, Dad worked there until it was from 80 to till the day it shut down. So
I guess, sure. Yeah.
So he worked there until after Grant's death and to the day it shut down. So that's the early 2000s.
Yeah. I was devastated when Grant died. That was, and again, it's like my father. It didn't surprise me he died in a car wreck, because he was a terrible driver. But
I never rode with him. I'd heard that though. But my father is a horrible driver as well, so I can picture it.
So I remember giving you guys toys, or you in particular. Eddie or Bill and Vicky were probably too old for toys by then, but
But you've always been such a kind and generous person, and I've always found like what you do is fascinating. I know I would anytime you were around, especially when you started your own thing, we'd have a chance to talk. I was always asking you about, if you had anything, because you guys were always looking for the next thing. I remember that. I remember how it's like you guys would have these ideas and you do these pitch meetings and you try to make them work. And
once a week. It was really cool. I kind of combined racing and toys after that when I had my own company. Are you familiar with the Carousel 1 models?
Sure.
Yeah.
So one day I called Frank Dalton, who was the head of. He was Carousel 1. Carousel 1 was only about 2 or 3 people in the United States, and everything else was done in China. But I called him one day, and out there for a while, and eventually I designed a lot of the models for Carousel One.
Oh wow.
He liked it because I was so close to the speedway, and he would arrange for me to go over there, and they would have put somebody with me. But I would take apart, with the help of the other guy, we'd take apart, take the bodies off or whatever, and I would take about 600 photographs of each car with a ruler next to it, or yardstick next to it, with every other inch colored black, so you could tell on the photograph. So that's the way you'd measure how big the part was. And so I'd take all the photographs and come back home, and then do a drawing of the car and all its parts, about 100 maybe parts in each car. And they would take that and we'd send it to Asia, and they would send back a prototype that was 1.5 times bigger. So it was, instead of 1/16, it was like 1/12 scale. And those patterns are just gorgeous. They're destroyed in the process of making the tooling for them. But that was a lot of fun, because I got to know people at the museum pretty well. I got to go in a basement. We were a couple times. We did one of Foyt's cars down there, Coyote, and we were started on doing the Novi for the Hertebees' Novi, but then that got stopped because of some kind of argument or some kind of issue over who really owned the car, even though it was at the Speedway Museum. So I got the drawings, but we never did that. And then he started doing airplanes, and he kind of spread it, I think, too thin, and then it really dropped off, because I think the first one he made was Rathman's Roadster, and I think he sold 10,000 of those.
Oh,
and
wow.
By the time we got done, the turbine, the wedge turbine, I think it was dropped down to like only 700. So when he decided to go out of business, he had me drive down. They were from High Point, North Carolina. He's still there. I talk to him every once in a while, and he had me drive down because he wanted to get rid of stuff. So he gave me all of the prototypes and parts and extra models. Maybe some were damaged a little bit, and I had to fix them. So my basement right now is like a little mini indie museum. I've got 2 slot car tracks down there. I got an HO slot car track and 143rd slot car track. I have a HO train, and but I've collected art from the Speedway, so the walls are covered. I live in a ranch house, so there's a pretty large basement, and the walls are covered with some of my art and other people's that I admire art that I've bought over the years. Then I have several cases that are full of Carousel One Indy cars, and one of them is an '84 March, was one of the last cars he did, and he did the Pennzoil, did Rick Mears' car, and we'd start to do Michael Andretti's Craco, and we stopped with 12. So I have one of the only 12 Craco cars in existence. And every time he would do a new car, he would take 12 of them, which was how many came in the shipping cart. He would take 12 of them and gold plate them.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. So I have several. I don't have them all, but I have several of those, and they're all signed by, because of Walter Goodwin, who would go out to lunch almost every day with Eddie and Watson. And so I kind of got to know Watson just from lunches. And so all my Carousel One Roadsters are signed by Watson, and a lot of them are signed by the drivers. So it's, I'm not allowed to have any racing. Well, my office upstairs has racing stuff in it where I am now, but most of the racing stuff has been delegated to the basement by my wife. I actually have. I got a nose off of one of Billy's cars that I got from Walter, and then Eddie gave me. Yeah, it's one of it's a championship dirt car, And then Eddie gave me one day, this is after Grant died, gave me the nose off of one of his cars. And this one was, I found out, a pretty significant, it was driven by Rutherford for a while, and Steve Chassis. So I had those noses hanging downstairs.
Is it got the 15 on it when it was a Kirsty Geronimo car from Jufrey? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you know it. And then I think Walter ended up with this right now. But I have the side piece of Sneva's car, the first car I was on. So it's got a little piece. It's a pretty big piece actually, but it's and then what else? So Grant, one day I went over there and he said, "Well, come on and help me." So I go over on Saturdays every once in a while in off season just to see him. And this Saturday I had to help him pull 7 Offies out of the engine room. He had them up on the loft area there.
Right.
And he found a couple bricks from the speedway while I was doing that, and he said, "Here, take these." So I've got 2 bricks that Grant gave me in my museum downstairs. So yeah, a lot of photographs, and I'm one of the moderators, I guess, of the Grant King Racing, the page on Facebook, and a lot of photographs there are from me. I did a lot of photography for him back then, or just for me too. I mean, I just took a lot of pictures, so I have a lot of pictures of Grant at different races, Grant and Doris. So it was fun.
Grant's a really, in racing circles, you know how it is, right? Some people are loved, some people are not loved. Some people have like these reputations. Grant was always great to me, and all that.
He had a heart of gold.
Yeah, and he could be a tough character. He was always great to me. And
I think Donald Davidson describes him as rather volatile.
Yeah, that's the first statement. That's as fair a statement as you get. Boy, and you get him and Dad together arguing, and that's like, I mean, that is a combustion right there. But the thing about Grant, though, when you step back and look at it as a whole, really an inspirational story. Immigrant, I think, through Canada, right? He was from Canada.
British Columbia.
Yeah, and just everything he was able to accomplish, and it wasn't just in auto racing. He did a lot of other things, and Grant really made a hell of a life, and made a really interesting life out of his life.
He was very very prolific with building race cars, especially the sprint cars in it. And I mean, he had watched the next door. And so, you know the story. When Gurney had the Eagle in '72, Grant wasn't going to pay I don't know what it was, like $5,000 or $8,000. It wasn't a lot of today's money. It was like, man, I could have owned one, but of course, I didn't have that kind of money back then. But instead of buying one from Gurney, he just went over there and copied it, And he was known for his ability to copy things and then put his own little twist in them, like the rear suspension on the Dragons were also the rear suspension on Foyt's Coyote. I don't know, a lot of people know that or not. That's the '77 Coyotes that he raced in the 70s. I had an upright once that had AJF stamped into it that I found at Grant's. I don't know what I did with that. He was very prolific. He had a heart of gold. He got mad a lot. I can remember wrenches flying into walls, and he was a funny guy. I mean, he was neat to be around, and if he's in a good mood, which he was most of the time, I think, there was nobody better. He was again, he was like a father to me. And at his funeral, his wife came up to me and said, he always thought of you as a son, which meant a lot to me.
Sure.
Yeah. So anyway, we move on.
he um, he had an amazing eye for detail. Um,
Yes. And he was a
that's the
hell
one
of
thing
a
I
craft.
remember. And I remember when we had gotten a stealth midget, and he went, because he still went to the Silver Crown races for
Yeah.
years, until not long before he passed away. But he would still go to the races, and he and Jeffrey would hang out and cook their brats and all that.
Yeah. I got a picture of me and Jufrey and Grant and Watson up at Milwaukee.
Yeah,
And that was when we're standing in the infield there cooking the brats. Food was a very important thing to Grant.
it was, man. Those
He
brats
didn't
too, man.
drink. I don't
Man,
think he drank though.
I never saw him drink too much, but he loved to eat, And Jufrey had this special place he'd go get his brats made. He had his own special mix, and it was a big deal. Like the
I'll
brats
tell you a
were
little
really big deal.
Jufrey story. Jufrey story. I met one of these. I don't know when it was, what time of the year it was. I drove over to Grant, and it must have been before Milwaukee race, but Grant and I drive up to Milwaukee, and I think it was in that old Volkswagen pickup truck that he had, and red, of course.
Sure. Oh yeah, of course.
We stopped at a place called Sally's. Have you ever heard of that in Milwaukee?
No, I don't know it.
It was a steakhouse. Food was unbelievable, but I felt like I was on the set of The Godfather.
Yeah, Goodfellas, something like that, right?
Yeah, I was waiting for Al Pacino to come out of the bathroom and shoot somebody. I mean, it was that kind of joint. But,
there was Spike talks about going to a dinner and probably the same place with Frank, and very similar feelings he had. A lot of guys named Tony. Frankie, Tony, things like that.
I particularly remember this old guy, probably 85, very trim, in a tux, and he had a girl about 25 on each arm, in gowns. So I don't think they were going to the senior prom. Maybe they were. Maybe the prom for seniors,
Right. He, that's a guy I miss too. I miss the Jufreys. I miss Frank. Frank.
I just ran into one. I was out at Grant's shop about 3 weeks ago, and one of the Jufrey brothers was there.
Was it Dominic or was it Frankie Jr.?
No, it was Dominic.
Okay, yeah,
Dominic,
I like Dominic. He's a good guy too. But anyway, so kind of getting back to what we were talking about, we were at Springfield, and Grant was eyeing this race car because Grant hadn't really been around the more modern midgets, right? At this point, he'd quit car building and stuff like that. And he was eyeing this car, and he was asking questions, and he was talking about this and that, and you could see it in his mind already, like how he would build it a little different than the way it was. Yep. And you could see his mind working because you could by the questions he asked. And it was interesting. It was interesting to be around Grant and just kind of get a feel for how his mind worked. But kind of getting back to what we're kind of talking about at the beginning. So they bring a script to you, right, at Kenner, and it's Star Wars or Ghostbusters or whatever. And you were talking about you could see the toys. I mean, in your mind's eye, you could see what the toys would be. Do they at that point do they have the designs for these items already, or were you guys ever involved in helping to design the look of the items?
Well, they would always say, if you come up with something cool, we'll use it. I don't think they ever did. Maybe once or twice, but not really. We did a lot of things that we billed as being just off camera.
Right.
It's there. You just didn't see it in the movie. So I think we had some things called mini rigs that were little vehicles that one figure would stand on and fly it around. So yeah, they were interesting story about reading scripts, and we would get scripts all the time for all kinds of stuff. And I remember we got a script for Men in Black. We ended up not doing the toys. I'm not sure who did, but I was up in Chicago for a day or two with some clients. This is when I had my own company afterwards, and so I decided to go see Men in Black. And I'm watching it, and it's like, wait a minute, I knew that was going to happen. And then someone says, wait, I knew that. And about halfway through, I realized it's because I read the script. I forgot I read the script. And so I thought I was clairvoyant there for a while, but then I remembered that I'd read the script. So, yeah. So, and I think, one of the things that career did is my oldest son, Patrick, who I have lots of pictures of. I have a picture of him in Grant's car when he was a year and a half old, and he's 41 now. He, I would draw with me at home when I come home and sketch and stuff. And I'm always sketching. I have a drawing of a race car right in front of me at the moment. It's of the Top Gun car. So anyway. I just got another call from my wife in California here, but I'll just send the voicemail. Anyway, he decided to go into the arts and he's an animator. He went to Ringling School of Design, became an animator, and then had the chance to, when he was at Disney, had the chance to present any idea he might have or ideas that he had for a short, 6-minute Disney short, and this was in 2014. So he presented to John Lasseter, who was a contemporary of Tim Burton. They both got fired from Disney on the same day.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they both got fired the same day. Obviously, Lasseter came back and did quite well because he ran that and the other joint. I can't think of it right now.
Pixar,
yeah.
Yeah.
So Patrick got to do that, and he did a movie that was on the front end of Big Hero 6, which was Disney's Christmas movie, and his film called Feast won the Oscar that year for Best Animated Short. So he was on stage thanking his mom and dad on national television and stuff. So he's nominated twice for Oscars. I think he has a couple Emmys, maybe. Yeah, I think he has 2 or 3 Emmys. So, and I have 3 sons, and all 3 of them are still racing fans. My youngest son John flies in every year for the 500. He's in Los Angeles also, and my son Chicago brings his 2 boys. So we're trying to pass the racing on. Interesting story about John coming back. This was probably, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or so. And he shows up with 3 girls that came back for the 500. And at the time I had 4 tickets together, and this girl had 2. So she came up to me and said, Mr. Osborne, would you mind perhaps trading your 4 tickets for the 2 that I have? And I said, sure. And, so they sat together, and these tickets were in turn 2. So in what is that, Southeast Vista. So I'm going up, and run out of rows. So it ended up being, on the 2 top rows that are above everybody else, up with the spotters. So after the race, I said, man, those were great seats. Where'd you get them? She said, my father gave them to me. He works for Roger Penske. he's Penske's lawyer, or one of Penske's lawyers, not in the racing end, but in the dealership end. So that was, other than being in the pits, that was the best race, best position seats that I ever had. So.
Oh wow! So you were talking about doing the design stuff for Grant. So I mean, whenever there was a new livery, and obviously there new liveries wasn't really a big thing like it is now, obviously. I mean, usually when there was a livery, it was for the whole year, I'm guessing. But so, I mean,
Yep.
pretty much whenever they had a new livery, like you designed it, right?
Yeah, for most of the 70s, yeah. And there's some, like for the Evel Knievel car, there are still some other designs that Bill Throckmorton has out at the museum. And then when Grant was doing, he was changing. And in fact, one time he had a lead on a Pub that was a Lotus 78, which was the World Championship car that Mario drove. But he had a lead on it, and there's a picture out of the shop of my rendition of what that car would have looked like. And there's a couple other renderings that they have hanging up out there. But Grant would say nothing about my designs. He'd say, "What do you want to?" I mean, nothing bad. He'd say, "Which one do you want to do?" And I'd tell him, and he'd say, "Okay." I mean, he had enough confidence in me, which I really appreciated. And he would always, just take it. And in fact, the Evel Knievel car was painted by George Snyder. Ziggy painted that car. A lot of people don't know that. Yeah,
I had no idea.
Yeah. And then the next, we won the Ppg Award for that car, which was an award was given out by Ppg for the best looking graphics on a race car for the race. And then the next year I won it again with a car I did for Chuck Looper and Russ Pollock. I think it was Larry Dixon drove it. It was a McLaren blue with some rainbow stripes and
oh yeah, beautiful race car. It had 80 on
it. Yeah, number 80. Yeah, Looper did change that around a little bit, but the basic concept, was I think mine. And then we did a car for Gary B, which was a Sony car, but it qualified in my paint scheme. But then I don't know if it was in practice or qualifications. Pancho Carter had the Hardy sponsorship, and he crashed and couldn't race in the 500, so they painted the Bettenhausen car up in Hardy's scheme. And then I ran into a guy.
Would that have been? Was that the year that Pancho crashed twice qualifying?
It might have been. I can remember it being on the pit wall and watching him go by, just skidding on the tub.
Yeah,
none of the wheels were on the ground anymore.
I don't remember if that was 88 or 89 or 87.
I think it was 88. I think it was 88. And I have, who Ken Coles is, right, or was. He's passed away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I have all of his cars, or all the cars that I've done. I have his prints, and he did black and white photography, and then he hand tinted them with the colors, which is a style that used to be done before color film was invented. But it's kind of this nostalgic look, as you know. So I was going to
tell Aaron, that was those Kid Coles things, like, and you'll see them, and you could tell that they're colored in. But I mean, I always felt like that. I always felt like those were so much cooler than any color photo I've ever seen.
I've probably seen them.
They're just amazing to look at, and I always felt like, I don't know, like when you would say, "Oh, I'm getting a Ken Coles of this car,"
Yeah, it was like the standard,
right?
You had to have it. Yeah. So, and you'll see them for sale at the memorabilia show, which I also have a table at every year, but I'm not. I think I'm done doing that because I don't have much to sell anymore. And let's see. I actually did think more cars for Gary Trout, who is over in Cincinnati, or now he's in Friendship, Indiana. But he was like a normal guy, an ordinary guy, and him and his dad got money together and bought a '87 March and made the race with Steve Chassis.
I remember.
It's a yellow and blue car. It has kind of stripes on the back of it. Chassis called them tiger stripes, but he chased a lot of people, a lot of sponsors, and every time I would do a rendering for that. So I have a bunch of the renderings I did for him. Those were magic marker renderings. And where else was I going? And then one year at the memorabilia show, I was selling some of my paintings, my illustrations, and Fred Junkless, who was worked in a graphic design studio there in Indianapolis, but he had a lot to do with the program. So he told the Speedway, and the Speedway commissioned me to do 8 or 9 illustrations. So I've been in for the 500 program. So I've been in the 500 program, been in the 400 program. I've done some stories, and I used to do some stories I think I did three different years for Carl Humness when he had the yearbooks. So it was pretty good, and actually one of the highlights of my Indianapolis love was this past May, the day after the race. I rode the 2-seater with Mario driving it, and that was, I had done it before with Billy Hamilton, probably 4 or 5 years ago. And on that day, Tom Beal and Walter Goodwin went with us to the track, and I didn't find out till afterwards that he had told Billy Hamilton to scare me when we were out there. So I don't know if he did or not, but it's so great. It's just unbelievable. It's anybody that rides that rides in a 2-seater, no matter who's driving it. I think they go about 185. And I remember the first time I did, I got out of the car and thinking, I thought I could be a race car driver like everybody else, but I don't know if I could do that with 32 other cars and going 50 mile an hour faster than we were going. I mean, you just have a new appreciation for drivers, and the G forces in the corners are tremendous. I mean, it's just really slams you down in there. So 800 of those turns during the 500. Those guys are athletes as much as anybody else.
Well, yeah, and I know Aaron talks about how much he loved it, and he was there that day, obviously. And it's amazing to think about too. Is it wasn't until the last real 25 years they even started really padding the cars, for G forces. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? To compensate. You see these drivers with these giant necks, and
well, they did it. Yeah, that's true. They have, when you do this 2-seater, they have a GoPro on you, and you're not hooked up to a Hans device. So if you look at the video that I have here, I mean, as soon as we hit the 3rd turn, my head snaps over, and then the last lap, I'm just holding my helmet down because air gets underneath and tries to pull it up, and it was really you have to concentrate on that. You try to look around or look around the driver or something, but when you move your head out in that airstream a little bit, that it wants to take the helmet right off your head.
Hey, that just made me think of something. It doesn't have the aero screen or the halo on it, does it?
No.
Also, it's really like it's the end of what it used to be like.
Yeah, no, it's very similar to, I mean, I don't think they've changed. They've changed like the I don't know, like the side pots and stuff a little bit, but I mean everything else pretty much the same. And that's the thing I noticed too, Tom. The big the two things you just mentioned. Number one, if you look at my GoPro in the corners of my helmet, does the same thing. Like it just goes all the way to the outside, and I cannot move my head. And obviously the driver has a lot more padding. So I mean, they just kind of plug and play people in those seats.
I think, I don't know, but I would think that you may be able to tell me that the Hans device, I think, helps that a lot too.
A little bit.
A little bit. It's more for forward and back.
Forward and backward.
Yeah.
It will. And I've never worn one, so I'm speaking from ignorance as well. But it won't allow your head to get quite as far over, I don't believe, because you are more restricted.
Yeah, you're tethered in a little bit. So Well, it's great though, isn't it? Going down
Yeah.
the straightaway,
Yeah, it was
watching go by.
the
I can imagine. I've never done it. I'm a little large for the old two-seater, so I have to watch
No, you
others
fit.
do it.
No, you fit. No
If
problem.
I'm a little large for the two-seater. I mean, I weigh 260, and
Really?
although
I
most
always
people
thought you couldn't be much heavier than like 220 or something like that.
no, they have. Well, the first time I did it with Davey Hamilton, they had 3 cars they were running that day, and there is a large car.
I did not know
the
that.
one I got. Yeah, there's one that's a
Huh.
little wider than the rest of them. You know, I could always fit in Foyt's cars because he would have the seats made a little bit wider on them. You know, they make them wider after they got them. The side bolsters would have little wedges out in them, so I could always fit in Foyt's cars. But I was in the Evil Knievel car. We brought it over for a concourse here in Cincinnati once, and I got in it, and after about 2 minutes, like the bottom from my waist down was numb. I mean, it was so packed in there, and they had to pull me out of it. I couldn't kind of move my feet to get out of it, so they're pretty tight.
You know, I think the coolest thing for me for doing the two-seater was just being like on the front stretch of the back stretch and just looking ahead and seeing. I mean, you know, one of the most iconic helmet designs of all time, Mario's helmet, which everyone knows in
Yeah.
racing, and just knowing that he was driving, it was just a really cool moment.
You're exactly right. I felt the same thing going down the back stretch, and you see the top of his helmet there, and I thought to myself, man, that is Mario Andretti in that helmet, you know.
Yep.
And when I was racing with Grant is when Mario was, really making his big career, and he wasn't the friendliest of guys back then. He knew Grant pretty well.
He's lightened up a little bit over the years. I think.
Yes, he has mellowed, and they had a luncheon before I know it was before or after, I forget.
Before.
It was before, and it was just super nice. And Mario couldn't be nicer. I have a lot of model race cars, and I took the one I have of his Grand Prix winning car, the Lotus 78 that he won the championship in, and he signed that for me. He signed a few other things. And the thing I forgot, which I just kicked myself, I have a poster. It's the STP poster of Granatelli kissing him.
Oh, wow.
In Victory Lane. And I have it signed by Granatelli. And it's like, damn, I missed getting him to sign it. I didn't think of it, And so I'll have to try to do that sometime if I run into him again.
Hey, did
in fact,
you ever?
Walter Goodland's dad is in that poster.
He is. That's right. He
Yeah.
is in that poster. Yeah. Hey, did you ever meet JC Agajanian? Because obviously he was around. Obviously he was part of that Evil Knievel car, and he was doing a lot of stuff with Granite at that time.
Well, the short answer is yes. But I got to tell you this story because this just happened this summer. I'm at the Walgreens down here near my house getting a prescription. There's a guy in front of me about maybe 45, 50 years old getting a prescription too. And they ask his name and he says Agajanian. And I go, excuse me, like in JC Agajanian? He says, yeah, he was my great uncle.
Oh, wow.
So this guy had been born and raised out in California and came back here because of a lady, and is married and has kids now. But he was, and he showed me some pictures of when the Agajanian family came over from Armenia. So pictures of Agajanian when he was a little kid. And but the interesting thing is, this guy, he lives in Cincinnati now. This guy has never been to the Speedway. And I said, your name's Agajanian, never been to the Speedway. I said, just go over there and knock on the door, and they will treat you like a king. They'll show you everything, because I think those are the people that are still there that remember JC Agajanian. But yes, in fact, there's a qualifying picture that we're both in, and he was quite a gentleman. I got another picture of me, Doris, Agajanian, at the banquet that year when we won the Ppg Award. So didn't know him well, but I was around him and had, talked to him several times. So real gentleman.
Yeah, we Robin's basically her nephew is Jagger Jones, which is Parnelli's grandson, PJ's son. And she got him for Christmas, or not Christmas, for his birthday a few years ago. That great photo of JC pouring in 150 silver dollars into Parnelli's helmet.
Yeah.
And he goes, and this just shows you the difference, the years go by. And Jagger goes, well, who's that guy? I said, well, that guy is the reason why you get to do all of this. That you get to go racing. That's JC Agajanian. And it's just funny how he didn't know much about him. I think he's done a lot of studying on that stuff since. But he was 17, I think, or something like that.
Yeah. And now the shirt that you have, is it Aaron, do you want to have it, or just
Scott gave it to me, I think. Yeah, no, you gave it to me, Scott. And it's actually a little too small for me, so I can't wear it. I think it says large, but I'm guessing it was a youth large, and I wear like adult small, so I can't wear it, but I definitely have it in my closet. And
you need to frame it then. Or something. Is it a T-shirt or is it a collared shirt?
T-shirt. It's the one with the like the bands on the sleeves.
Does it have an image on the back?
It doesn't have anything on the back.
No.
Because there are some of those that have a image that I drew that it was the year that Grant was running all three cars and made the race with three of them, and it was also used in artwork for his sprint car race that we'd have on the night of qualifications out at IRP. But it was done with heat. It's a heat transfer, and I got a couple of those that haven't been put on a shirt yet. But it was a sketch I did in about 15 or 20 minutes, and they ended up using it. Had all the cars on it: 98, 97, and 96, and then I think what's his name? Harkey drove that car that year. Bettenhausen was on one, and Kinzer in one, and then Harkey. Or maybe it was the year of John Martin. I don't remember. But so some of them have an image on the back as well. You got the one that has the Evel Knievel car on it?
Yep, it's got the drawing on the front, and it has it has some words on the front. I forget what it says, but yeah, it's just a rendering of the car.
Yeah.
The shirt's made out of a really weird material too. It's not really a T-shirt.
Yeah.
It's a very strange material. I don't even think it would be legal to make.
Well, I tell you what, man. When I opened that bag, that shirt had been in that bag for probably how many years? 40 years.
Oh, it had. Well, I mean, you got it in 2018, and it had been in that bag since before then.
So
I mean, since whenever it was made. So
the smells that came out of that bag were not pleasant.
The smell of an Offie, right? A turbo Offie.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
A little.
I have a feeling the chemicals would not be allowed to be used for many of the items, either what the shirt was made of or what the ink was made of. I'm not sure which.
Yeah. Well, a little tidbit of super minuscule trivia. When those shirts came out, they passed them out to the crew, and Gary got one, Gary B, and he all of a sudden got really pissed. And I didn't do this because I didn't put it on the car, but they put his name on it, and they spelled it Bentonhausen, B-E-N-T, and
wow.
He really got pissed.
That's funny.
He was madder than hell that day. So if you want to look, Bettenhausen is not spelled correctly on that shirt.
That's funny.
Wow. I sound like Donald Davidson with some minuscule bit of trivia that only he knows,
Right.
Is he
That's
retired
the good stuff,
completely? Is he not around?
Yeah,
anymore,
he's
or-
retired.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's too bad.
he's around.
Yeah,
I don't think I saw him this year. I don't think I saw him on the track at all this year, but I remember seeing him year before. But
So
yeah.
the last time I saw Donald Davidson, I was going to the McDonald's on 16th Street. I pull up, and Walter is standing outside, and he and Donald Davison are talking out in front of the McDonald's. And
you should probably go
stopped.
back for dinner. You should have went back for dinner. They'd still be there,
Oh, yeah.
especially Walter.
Oh man.
Right. So obviously, Tom, when you started in the design world, I mean, everything was pretty much drawing by hand, right? Like when was
Yeah.
the first time you did any kind of model or anything on a computer?
I've never modeled 3D on a computer, but when I had my consultancy with, Photoshop came along.
Mm-hmm.
But interesting enough, where I teach at the University of Cincinnati, which is generally either first or second in the country for industrial design, rated that way, it's still like I'm going to start teaching next Tuesday for fall semester, and it's almost exclusively by hand then. So I use a iPad Pro, and I have a program called Procreate. I don't know if you've seen that or not.
I have.
But it is magic, especially if doing automotive stuff. And I mean, you can draw a very, very rough, sloppy ellipse, and it'll snap it to what it thinks is the closest, and then you can change that ellipse around. You can make it taller or wider or narrower, and move it around, and it'll take curves, and it's just magic. So it's right next to me now, and it has probably 25 car renderings on it, Detroit style car renderings. The swooshy concept kind of car stuff. I like to do that, and I wish I had gone to Detroit, but then I wouldn't have the toy stuff, and I wouldn't have been Star Wars guy. There's several books that I'm in, and which is fun. It's fun it was a great time. It was, we could make anything and put a Star Wars logo on it, and it would sell.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
It's funny it's funny you're talking about, doing really everything you've done by hand. And like I said, I went to school for graphic design, and 98% of everything we did was solely on, Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop. So it's definitely funny how things have changed. And it's funny that I even went to school for graphic design, because I cannot draw a straight line to save my life, and I was able to get through graphic design school. I'm not a graphic designer now. I have a job doing IT stuff, but I do graphic design stuff on the side. But I always thought it was funny that I was so bad in art in school, and I ended up doing graphic design.
Yeah, I'm actually doing more a painting. It's in Procreate, but I'm doing a painting now of the Joe Dawson number 8. It was at the Speedway. I took some photographs of it. It's in the museum, and I'm trying to replicate oil painting with what you can do, because you have a gazillion brushes that are in the program,
right?
And there's more of them you can buy online or download from online. So I'm trying to kind of do more of a fine artsy painting, and I'm just looking at it now. So it looks pretty good. I'll send it over to you guys. You got to send me your emails addresses.
Yeah. I'll text you.
Mine's easy to remember. It's Tom Osborne. That's with the E at the end and no U. So OSBORNE, Tom Osborne 500 at Gmail. So 500. I just randomly picked a number.
Right.
Yeah. So that's my story, I guess.
Well, it's a hell of a story. I'll tell you that. It's I gotta tell you, you've always been very kind to me. You've always been somebody.
You were just a kid back then. You know,
Yeah,
when
I
were
know,
you born?
right?
When were you born? The 70s or
I was 69.
69? Okay, so you were 5 and 6 years old. I gave a lot of stuff to Billy Throckmorton too back then when he was a little kid, hanging around the shop.
So I never really met you until like I was like 10 or 11, because Dad went to work for
Yeah,
Grant,
probably.
79, 80.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, you've always been so kind to me, and I always have found you to be a really interesting guy because of all the topics we've talked about here, and it just I just find it fascinating that world where where you're bringing things to life that are obviously just on a flat sheet of paper at one
Yeah.
time, and then then they come to life. And um again, thank you so much for always being a friend, and thank you so much for doing this show.
It's a pleasure. India's changed quite a bit. I would say I might not be quite as enthusiastic about it as I used to be, but I still go every year, and will until I can't go every year. And I'm a Formula One fan too. I've been to about 8 or 9 Formula One races, including Spa in Belgium, which was unbelievable. I saw Schumacher, his first victory at Spa. Wow. And as you probably know, I'm sure you watched the series Drive to Survive on Netflix. My daughter-in-law works for Netflix, and that is one of their top 5 shows. And it's really brought interest in Formula One, as you're probably aware too. And, I heard they wanted to do an IndyCar version, and IndyCar didn't want to do it for some reason. I don't know if that's true or not, but
there's a lot of rumors. Apparently, they filmed something though, right, Scott? I remember someone talking about last year that they filmed something.
Apparently they started filming something. I don't know. Man, that's a
there's
whole.
There's one about Dixon.
Yeah, Born Racer.
Yeah.
I would tell you that I think, as much as I respect the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and I respect the principals that are in charge of it and in charge of IndyCar, I will tell you, I think they are woefully underserving themselves by not using their assets in IMS Productions to promote themselves. And I'm not saying those things won't change. I'm just saying that from an outsider's perspective, and of course I have no knowledge of anything, they have so much at their fingertips that they just let sit in vaults, and they're not out there promoting themselves. And it's so sad.
They sit in vaults with their money. I remember the rumor was that when we go down in the basement of the museum, you go down the steps, and right in front of you is a door with a combination lock on it, and it's about 6 inches of diameter, so it's this big. And the rumor is that's where Tony Holman kept all his money. I don't know if that's true or not, but have you ever been? Either you been in the basement?
No,
I've never been. I've been invited to go, and for different reasons, I just have never had a chance to get over there. I know several people that have. Of course, they sell a tour now of the basement.
Yeah.
They did a video, the Behind the Bricks with Doug Bowles. I think he went down there. They had those rooms where they keep a bunch of old stuff, and that may be the same room that you're talking about.
It's there's all the real pace cars are down there for many of the races, NASCAR included. The one that actually paced the race. It used to be that they give the actual car to the driver that won,
right,
500, but they probably stopped that a while back. And as you probably know, that's a spot that is bidded on, so the highest bidder gets to be the pace car. And now it's usually Chevrolet, because they're going to be pace trucks now because nobody's making sedans or convertibles.
Right.
Have to be Mustang. The Camaro's going away, so it has to be a Mustang every year, which would be cool.
Well,
anything else?
Nope. I don't have anything.
Nope. No, Tom, really appreciate it. Like I said, look, I think I told you this. I'm like kind of the social media guy at Top Gun Racing now and Grand King Shop.
good.
So we're actually working on doing some t-shirts now. I think we're gonna maybe bring back some of the older designs, put a newer spin to it. So yeah, no, I've
Bill
definitely.
and Bill and Stephanie are coming over here for lunch on Friday, and
Oh, really?
I have a friend that has about 23, 24 exotic cars, including four GTs from the 60s.
Wow.
And he's a great guy, but he has macular degeneration, so he can't drive. But unfortunately, I have to drive all those cars for him. And we go to
Tough job. Someone's got to do it.
Yeah. So we go to a cruise in every Saturday morning, different ones, and he has two Daytona Coupe and a regular Cobra and a Cobra Daytona Coupe and a Viper and 4 Ferraris, and he just finished a little-known Italian car called a Seata, and there's like 10 of them left in the world. He has 2 of them. And what else has he got? He's got the 4 GTs, the Mark IIs. And what else? Oh, he's got a Vector, which was it's a Lamborghini underneath, but it's an American car company that made this car called a Vector.
Had really sharp body lines, right? The body lines were very sharp on it.
Yeah. So, in fact, we're going out at the end of October. We're going to go to the Vector gathering that's out there. We're trying to figure out how to get his car out there or not. It's really expensive. And then we're going to go SEMA after that. So that's something I'm looking forward to. SEMA is another thing that's on my bucket list. That's especially, it's everything automotive, everything you can imagine, and Chuck Foose and a lot of those kinds of people are there, and it's just a really neat thing. So looking forward to that.
I don't think there's anything cooler in the custom car world than when Chip Foose does a car for you. He does the drawing as well, and I think
exactly.
I think it's I literally, if I had that kind of money, I would buy a Chip Foose car just for the drawing. I absolutely would.
Well, I think he should do a book of those drawings. You can, in fact, I have one of them, a print, and I've met Chuck or Chip rather, on 2 occasions. One was here in Cincinnati at a car show, and I took the print I had, and I told him I teach at UC, so he put on it to Tom. Thanks for all you do for the students, Chip Foose. So I have that. And then when I was out in LA, I go to LA a lot because my son and 2 sons and 2 grandsons are out there. And I've been to his shop down at Huntington Beach, which is not where they film it. It's really quite small. But on Fridays, they'll give little tours of the place. So if you're ever out in LA again, on Huntington Beach, you can go see Chip Foose's place. I was at Boyd Coddington's before he passed away, at his place. And it's I've always been one to try to put my foot in the door places like I did at Grant's, and of course Grant's really paid off. But I've never been shy about going up and talking to somebody and asking them questions, and then trying to do work for them if I could. So
sure. Hey, I do have one last question.
Okay.
Grant's logo, and I know they're it's never really went away, but I know they're trying to promote it a little bit more now, the crown with the king in it. Do you know who originally designed that? I have no idea.
I do not. It might have been Ron Burton. I know Ron did a lot of stuff.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
But,
to me, it's one of the most iconic. To me, it's one of the most iconic race designs.
Okay, it's been nice talking to you guys.
Hey, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yep, thanks, Tom. I appreciate it.